Spiderman beats out Mario, Cities Skylines 2 has PowerPoint FPS, and the designer of SQWORD gets the ultimate revenge. I'm Ash Dixon and this is GINX News. It was a great weekend for gaming. PlayStation fans were web-slinging their way through Spider-Man 2, the Nintendo players cosplayed as Dumbo in Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and Xbox fans, well, I don't know, twiddled their thumbs while waiting for Baldur's Gate 3 to be available. Pretty sad times. But what was the bigger release of the weekend? Well, according to physical sales in the UK, it was Spider-Man 2. In fact, it comfortably won out over Mario, becoming the fourth biggest physical release of the year, behind only Tears of the Kingdom, EA Sports FC 24, and Hogwarts Legacy. As for Mario Wonder, it's the third biggest physical launch for a Mario game in UK history. Sadly, Nintendo doesn't publish their digital sales, but throw those on top, and many suspect it could take the top spot. Meanwhile, in the long run, I reckon Wonder will easily beat out Spider-Man 2. Don't get me wrong, I love me some Spider-Man, even did a photo shoot with the man himself once, not even gonna explain that image. But Mario games have a habit of just sticking around at the top of sales charts for months and months on end. I mean, Mario Kart 8 has been in the top 10 since it launched like 9 years ago on the Wii U. Now, I played a little bit of Mario Wonder over the weekend, and I won't lie, I've always been more of a 3D Mario kind of guy, but I must admit, the art style just oozes with character and the multiplayer is a ton of fun. Meanwhile, our producer Matt has been playing Spider-Man 2. Give me a couple words how you've been finding that, Matt.
It's great.
Well, there you go. Everyone wins. Well, unless you're playing on Xbox. We'll actually be playing both of those games over on our Twitch channel this week, so give the link in the description a little follow if you want to see those in action. Good news, everyone, and video game music fans. Sony Interactive Entertainment has dropped a fresh batch of game soundtracks over on Spotify. As spotted by Annie Playlist on Twitter, Sony has added the soundtracks for games like Gravity Rush, Shadow of the Colossus, and Wild Arms, expanding a discography that already boasts soundtracks for games like Bloodborne and The Last Guardian. Now, while I've never even heard of Wild Arms, it's certainly great to see the iconic Shadow of the Colossus soundtrack available for people everywhere to listen to in all of its symphonic glory. Now, I can write the script for this show while imagining myself riding aggro across the Forbidden Lands whilst attempting to fell a giant sky serpent. It's certainly a mood. For now, it seems as though these soundtracks have only been added to Spotify and not currently coming up on Apple Music or other music streaming platforms. However, Sony have brought their previous soundtracks to other services, so that may be something we see in the future. What's your favorite video game soundtrack of all time? Let me know which you'd like to see available on streaming services. I personally wish Nintendo would up their game here and drop all of the music from Zelda, especially the title music for Ocarina of Time. I mean, just listen to it. With just a few piano strokes, I'm transported to my childhood, exploring Hyrule, brimming with innocence and free of worry, so full of hope and dreams. City Builder fans are anxious to finally get their hands on Cities Skylines 2, and with it just being a day away, reports are coming in for some rather shocking FPS issues. In fact, one website, PC Games Hardware, has been running their own benchmarks, and God, it does not look good. So let's play a little game, shall we? What FPS do you reckon you would get for high 4K settings on the following rig? It has an i9 13900KS with an AMD Radeon RC 7900 XTX. Well, did you guess 7? That's right, the game dips to 7 FPS with a cool average of 12. And I mean, that's so hilariously bad, it's almost impressive. Imagine paying $1,000 for a graphics card to be met with a slideshow of your new city. Lovely. Now, one thing the website doesn't specify was the size of the city when the benchmarks were taken, and anyone who's played Cities Skylines knows they can get pretty big. Luckily, YouTuber City Planner Plays has made a pretty in-depth video looking at the performance and settings. I recommend checking out the full video, but interestingly, he discovered that the performance drop from the population size isn't linear. So while running at 4K with a 4090, he got 52 FPS with a measly 1K population. That dropped rather dramatically to 28 FPS when the city hit 25K. However, the FPS then hovers around the 20s all the way up to a population of 100,000. And overall, those are just abysmal numbers. It's pretty pathetic that even with one of the best gaming rigs money can buy, you can't even hit 30 FPS. And the terrible optimization has been reflected in a lot of the reviews, which have averaged a lot lower than I imagine people were expecting. And I know a lot of people will be keeping their fingers crossed for the infamous day one patch, but come on, realistically, it will barely scratch the issue, and the game is clearly a long way from where it should be. But what do you think? This will be disappointing news for a lot of people, but are you still planning to pick it up? Perhaps you're going to wait a little bit. Let us know in the comments below. For a game as terrible as Redfall, it's somewhat confusing how it keeps producing headlines. I suppose it makes sense. It was one of just 2 AAA exclusives on Xbox this year, if you could call it a AAA title, but it's mostly thanks to publisher Bethesda refusing to abandon the damn thing. In fact, the latest rumor from one industry insider is that they want to give the game a redemption arc. And man, I'll always praise ambition, but that sounds like a rather impossible task to me. The report comes from Digital Foundry's John Linneman, who goes on to explain how they want to turn things around, much in the style of Cyberpunk 2077, which is again a bold mission, because let's be honest, it's not even a fair comparison. Yeah, Cyberpunk 2077 launched in a woefully poor state, but there was always a great game hidden underneath. It just barely worked. Even if Redfall ran perfectly, it's still filled with empty environments and slideshow cutscenes that just rinse the game of any depth or immersion. And yes, redemption arcs are obviously possible. Cyberpunk has done it, and in recent days we've seen Halo Infinite have a nice spike in players, but there's a big difference there because players actually want those games to be good. Halo is a beloved franchise, and Cyberpunk had an unbelievable amount of hype. Redfall just kind of meandered its way into existence before sneaking away into the shadows in shame. And look, I'd be down for a fun cooperative vampire shooter, but there's a big question of how a fix would even be possible with most of Arcane Austin practically being dissolved. But hey, at least Xbox got Starfield this year, right? Sometimes in life, people cross you. You could take the high road, or you can reap petty revenge. And let's be honest, it's more fun for everyone when you pick the latter. You see, ever since the Wordle explosion, we've seen all sorts of word and number-based browser games pop up all around the place. One such example is SQWORD, made by Josh C. Simmons. The concept is simple. You start with an empty 5x5 grid, and one by one you're given random letters to put into the boxes. The aim is to create as many words as you can, with more points for longer words. Turns out I'm not very good at it, although I did nearly get the word nonce in there. Sadly, I didn't get the letter C. Either way, it's a fun browser game enjoyed by thousands. But we can't ever have nice things, can we? And Simmons soon discovered that a bunch of monetized websites essentially stole his game. They did so by using software called iframe that lets you take someone else's webpage and embed it on your own. Well, as Simmons explained, the mature and responsible thing to do would have been to add a content security policy to the page. He then said, "But I am not mature." No, instead he decided to render the classic internet shock image Goatsy whenever anyone stole his game. Now, Goatsy is a word I haven't heard in a couple of years. It was the bane of my school life, and we obviously won't show the image because we love and respect you guys. But for those blissfully unaware, it's essentially an image of a man spreading his anus. Apologies for those with an imagination. And he didn't leave it there. He also threw in the text on top that said, "I steal other people's code because I'm a total hack." And according to Simmons, live deploying a massive Goatsy image to at least 8 domains that aren't his is one of his, and I quote, "greatest achievements as a dev," which I guess is an interesting statement. He also signed off by saying, "Let this be a lesson to you. If you are using an iframe to display a site that isn't yours, even for legitimate purposes, you have no control over that content. It can change at any time. One day, instead of looking into iframe, you may be looking into an entirely different kind of portal." And that's the show. Give us a like, comment, and subscribe. It massively helps us out. Check out Friday's Saucy video right here, and we'll see you tomorrow.